My husband is German, and we met in Vancouver, Canada in 2009, which I haven't shared this part of my story yet, but I had actually just recently returned from living in Sydney, Australia. Yeah, I was living in beautiful Potts Point. I had the most magnificent apartment with the view of Rushcutters Bay, which,
Yeah.
I don't want to sell my future self short, but I'm not sure I'll ever have a view like that again.
Welcome to the Truly Expat Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Paula, and this is Season 2. On Season 1, I talked to expats about their favourite holiday destination. On Season 2, I'll be doing things very differently. I'll be chatting to expats about where they currently live, why they chose that destination, all those secret hidden gems that only locals know, like favourite restaurants, best neighbourhoods, things that tourists don't. Welcome back to the Truly Expat Travel Podcast. And today I have an exciting guest
I'm a
here.
gift.
She is a gift. Kelty Maguire is a Canadian living in Munich, and she has a really interesting story. So I'd like to introduce her, and she can actually, I was going to talk to you and tell you a little bit about her, but I'll get her to introduce herself and tell us who she is and how she got to Munich and what's her podcast all about.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Paula. I'm super happy to be here. And this is, a change from the topics I usually talk about. And I love travel. I love where I live. So I'm super excited to share a bit about my city and my journey. I've been living here for 8 years. We just celebrated our 8 years living in Munich anniversary.
Oh, wow.
Which,
congratulations.
thank you. Yeah, it feels like a pretty substantial amount of time, I guess, at this point. My husband is German, and we met in Vancouver, Canada in 2009, which I haven't shared this part of my story yet, but I had actually just recently returned from living in Sydney, Australia. Yeah, I was living in beautiful Potts Point. I had the most magnificent apartment with the view of Rushcutters Bay, which,
Yeah.
I don't want to sell my future self short, but I'm not sure I'll ever have a view like that again.
That is a
Overlooking
pretty
the
part of
ocean. Yeah. Just magical. And so, yeah, I had returned. We met shortly after my return to Canada in 2009. And when we met, my husband had recently moved to Vancouver with the idea of it being a sort of year-long experience of getting professional expertise or experience speaking English. He had done some additional language studies in English, and he thought, a lot of as you probably appreciate, having lived many countries, brushing up on your English and being able to use it professionally is a great skill for a professional to have. Anyways, that was his story when we met. And, he said to me, like, very early days, I'm going to want to go back to Germany at some point. Would you be open to coming with me? And, or like, that's sort of what we'd probably want. That's what the future might look like or entail. And it was very, very easy for me to say, like, yeah, absolutely. I would totally move to Europe with you. I center Europe in the sense that I'd never been to Germany before, but I knew that I would just have this like world at my doorstep if we were to do that. So I credit the move to Sydney with probably creating this sort of openness that I'm not sure how it's been for you, but for me, I feel like once you relocate yourself so far from everything once, it becomes easier to do it again. And of course, Sydney and Australia, a Commonwealth country, they speak English. There are some differences with Germany, but I was open for the adventure. So we thought that might happen within, a year, 2 years, a few years, but actually we had been together almost 9 years by the time we did decide to make the move to Germany. And I would say in terms of the sort of precipitating events or timing, my husband, when he left, had been in his mid-20s and had different probably concerns or considerations. For example, in those 9 years, his parents had aged, as we all had, but they were starting to have some health issues, which made him feel like it would be important to go spend some time living in Germany again. There was also an opportunity with a job for him the year prior to when we moved. And although that particular job didn't end up being the right fit, and it also wasn't the right timing for us for personal reasons to make the move, it did get the wheels turning. And then that following autumn, I guess in 2017, we said, like, okay, let's consider a move to Germany, which then, of course, we had to ask, where in Germany are we going? And so Munich, I kind of like this part of the story in the sense that, like, there's nothing wrong with moving for love. One can say it's very romantic, but this notion, as we hear with, I think, a lot of expat immigrants in countries of like, oh, you move for a man, you move for love. Well, I consider it more like we made this move together as a couple, and we actually chose a city that neither of us had lived in. And so we were, setting down new roots as a couple. My husband had grown up near Stuttgart and spent his, sort of early adulthood in Stuttgart in Germany, which is a lovely city. But we settled on Munich both for its proximity to his family, which is spread sort of throughout the south of Germany, as well as his dad actually now lives in Austria, which is where he's originally from. And we also wanted to be close to the mountains. So that was a big driver. And Munich's also incredibly central in Europe. So I have to say, it's like really a fantastic place to live.
That sounds really
Yeah.
exciting. We will talk a little bit more about Munich, which is the subject, but I
Yeah.
want to hear about your podcast. Just let's
Yeah.
talk a little bit about your podcast first before we
Yeah.
go into it.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I realized I know there was like a few questions there, and with my in-depth storytelling, it always takes time to arrive back at okay, where were we going with it? Yeah. So, my podcast, it's called the Kids Are Child Free Podcast. It's available where you can find your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, YouTube. The driver behind that is, in effect, when I moved to Germany, I would have been, I guess, about 35. I'm 43 now. And the big pressing question on my mind was I going to have children or not? And I think, like a lot of women, I had the assumption that probably someday I would. And yet I never really had like a huge desire or drive for that experience. And on the flip side, I also felt like I didn't not want kids. Like, I, first of all, was very unacquainted with anyone who had deliberately chosen the child-free path or lifestyle, if you will. But the people I did sort of hear about anecdotally, or that I saw, I started discovering there's this whole world of people who've made this choice. I didn't identify with the very definitive, I've never wanted this, I absolutely don't want kids, sometimes even kind of disparaging negative attitudes towards like parents and children. That was something I didn't identify with. And I also didn't identify with so many of the women I knew who really had a longstanding dream of parenthood. And so I went through a real, sort of personal upheaval and journey, which was sort of alongside also a big career change for me. I actually was designing jewelry when I moved to Germany after a career in sales. So I had a career in sales. I was designing jewelry. I had my own jewelry brand. Ultimately decided to move into a service-based business where I was coaching people and helping them find clarity around profession and career. And so through this career transition and questioning, do I want to have kids or not? I was asking myself also, and let's also say the move to Germany, asking myself a lot of big questions like, what do I want my life to look like? I've got all these people back in Canada who are having children and they're moving to the suburbs. And that's, of course, like a very valid life path. But it sort of was a chance for me to reflect on like, what do I want? Am I being deliberate in my choices? And also for us as a couple. So I did eventually come to the decision, and we came to the decision not to have children. But I really found that period of indecision and ambivalence very lonely, very difficult. And so over a period of a couple of years, I started moving my business towards helping people with this decision and helping them figure out what ultimately feels right for them, whether that's to have kids or to stay child free. There's a lot of pressures I think women in particular, I know women in particular feel around this choice and, what it means to be a good woman and to reproduce. And it's not necessarily, though, the right path for everyone. And so I started professionally exploring this arena. And I'd always had this idea that I should have a podcast around this topic, because one of the big questions for me as I was navigating this and even afterwards was, how do people actually make this decision? Like, Paula, you mentioned you have grown children now, and there's, as we've also talked about, I think the assumption for many people, and it's still the case, is like, well, that's just what you do. But there's still, even for people who desire that, like what signals the readiness? What allows someone to feel confident enough to make this big life choice, or conversely, to close the door on kids if they decide to stay child free? So I had this idea for a podcast where I would sort of in alternating episodes interview people about their decision to either have children or the decision to remain child free. And it's predominantly women featured on the podcast, although I have had some couples and some men as well. I'm trying to share, diverse stories from people of different backgrounds and really looking at how different considerations are figured into this. So for some people, we might talk a little bit more about how their own upbringing and, let's say, having been parentified at a young age and having had to take on that role of mothering or caregiving, how that's maybe lent itself to either reluctance to become a parent or maybe the decision to do things differently. I've had a world-class philosopher on to talk about this through like a philosophical lens. I find we just published our 101st, 100th, and then this week episode 101, 101st
Oh,
episode.
wow.
Yeah. And
Congratulations.
so, yeah, thank you so much. And it's like, I feel like if anything, there's just more and more that we can really mine and explore. So, yeah, that's the podcast.
Awesome. I'm really looking forward. I'll put the link in the show notes so people can have a listen themselves as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Paula.
So let's get started. Munich. So now I know how you got there and why you got there. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about the city itself. What is it known for? What is it famous for? What do people go to Munich for?
Yeah. So, Munich, we're about an hour from the Alps, or what we'll call, like, they call them the Voralpen. So it's basically like before the Alps, or the Alps, the mountains before the mountains. And so, a lot of people love the area because it's very close to nature. We have a lot of beautiful lakes. Munich itself is a flat city, however, which I love about it because it means it's really easy to get around by foot or by bike. It's known probably as, we can say it's like very much the quintessential German city when you think of Germany, or when people think of Germany, because a lot of times people think about things like lederhosen and pretzels and Oktoberfest. And those are all things that come from Munich specifically, and like Bavarian culture broadly, which is the, province or state that Munich is located in. We have the English Gardens, which is gardens doesn't really, like, it's not an apt description in my mind. It's like a big, beautiful park, something like, it's not going to be as sizable as something like Central Park, but like this is, the kind of the big city park we see in many beautiful world-class cities, with walking paths and lakes and beer gardens, and people hang out there in the summer. It's like a really nice vibe. A lot of tourists enjoy, in our Altstadt, the old city, we have what's called the Viktualienmarkt, which is an outdoor market with food stalls, fresh vegetables, coffee, flowers. We've got beer gardens. When I think about what beer garden culture and being outside, so there's a lot of history here as well. Although, and having spent time in Berlin, there was, like, of course, this is the country's capital, and with specifically World War II, this is where the Nazi movement really sort of had its foothold. But actually, much of that came up in Munich, and so, without being a historical expert, like here, for example, just a few blocks from where I live is what's called Königsplatz, the King's Square, which actually I believe was built by, I think it was like King Leopold and it's funny because it looks like old sort of Grecian or Roman, like a square with the pillars and everything. Like, it looks older and of a different culture than what it is. But that was actually where Hitler used to have a lot of his, like, marches and rallies when he was, like, coming into power. It's where the putsch happened, which I think is like is it a coup where, there was the uprising, and some of the Nazis, they were murdered, and then it was like they were revered. They created this memorial, which has since been taken down, of course, because it was celebrating the Nazis.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's like very rich history here, which is really interesting, and it's something specifically in the neighborhood that I live in called Max Vorstadt, that there's like a lot of richness there in terms of like what happened in that era, if that's something of interest to people. So,
And then what season do you think would be the best season to come to
yeah.
Munich?
Yeah, I would personally say anytime from about, like, we're recording this in April, so anytime from like spring, April through to probably October. If you like Christmas markets, you could come in the winter time, but to me, Munich is at its most beautiful. The vibe feels like most Munich to me in the spring and summer months. And it's quite nice into autumn. The only kind of caveat I'm going to give with that is, unless you're planning to come for Oktoberfest, the big beer festival party carnival, which does not just happen in October, it actually starts at the end of September. I would avoid end of September and early October. Yeah, it runs for 2 weeks with over 3 weekends. So we've got the weekdays in between. We've got the 3 weekends. Very funny, a couple times my mom said, I think I'm going to come for kind of like a spontaneous visit next month. I'm thinking end of September. I'm like, you are going to be paying hundreds of euros for the most small, insubstantial, like bare basics hotel room. So, and we can perhaps talk about Oktoberfest, but like, unless that's on your agenda where you're like, I want to come for Oktoberfest, I would personally avoid those weeks, because it's just, it's going to be a zoo, and it's going to be very expensive to visit the city, unless you have accommodation with, like, someone like me.
Yeah, unless it's
if you're
free.
my friend. Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so what about souvenirs? I'm not talking magnets. I'm talking stuff that you can take away with you that's a little unique that most tourists don't grab.
Yeah. So we have, for people who are sports fans or soccer fans here, we call it Fußball or football. We have the Bayern München team as our city team, which is, consistently one of the top teams in Germany and Europe. So somebody might want to get like an FC Bayern jersey or t-shirt. There's, for example, even downtown, like shops, or even at the airport, there's actually a dedicated store that you can pick up a t-shirt for the Bayern München soccer team. Another thing, which it's like a little bit kitschy, which I guess a lot of times souvenirs are, but it's something very quintessentially Munich. And they sell them at Oktoberfest and a lot of the other like festivals, but you can also just buy them in shops. It's Lebkuchen, which is similar to a gingerbread, but it's different. It's not quite as sweet in flavor, but it's a kind of cookie basically. And it's they're not my thing. I've never wanted one, but a lot of people go wild for them, especially the girls at Oktoberfest. They like getting them. A lot of people get them from like their boyfriend or their partner. And it's basically a giant heart. So I'm trying to think like size wise, like the face of a soccer ball, if we're talking about soccer, not quite that big, but it's big. And they're decorated with icing and whatnot. They're wrapped in like cellophane or plastic. You're probably not going to want to eat it. It's honestly not going to taste great. They are edible, but like I probably wouldn't. And it comes on a ribbon, which you can put around your neck, and you can wear this Lebkuchen. And what it says on the front is different kinds of things, but it might say something like Schatzi, which Schatz is treasure, and it's a pet name in German. Schatzi is like a diminutive and sort of a cute little name like sweetie or something like that. Or it might say mouse, which is mouse is a mouse, but like these are like little kind of pet names. Or it might say mein Liebe, my love. So, and sometimes you can get them actually written on like something a little bit personalized, but that would be something that's like very quintessentially Munich, that's relatively inexpensive, that you could bring back for people from the city.
Now that you've talked about food, let's get into what the best food is to try. Like, what do you think? What food to try? What drink to try?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to caveat this by saying some of my recommendations, I eat a predominantly plant-based diet and I do not eat meat. That being said, German is really known for meat and that heavy sort of meat culture. So for example, schnitzel, which, Wiener Schnitzel actually comes from Wien, which is Venice in Austria, but we do have it here. And it's traditionally calf meat. It pains my heart because it's like calf meat consumption is huge, which, I mean, that's a whole other conversation. If we're eating a baby animal versus a grown animal, we can say it's egal, as the Germans say. It's one or the other. But in any case, for people who love that, it's like very delicious, tender. It might be served with like a cold potato salad, which is done a little bit differently than what we might see in like Canada or the States. I'm not sure how it is in Australia. So it's typically not with mayonnaise, but it's usually they boil and then peel the potatoes afterwards. They slice them thin. They serve them they mix it all together with like some vinegar and some seasoning and some usually onions. So that's something that's often served with the schnitzel. So I remember myself wanting to get, when I used to eat meat, like loving wurst or sausage. So there's lots of great sausages that you can have here, and you can have them served on a bun, similar to a hot dog. Although usually the sausages are much longer and larger than you'd see with again, a North American hot dog. But you can also have it served on a plate with other manner of sides. I think it would be, it's so funny because a lot of times it's like, I think it's like a Bratschwein or something, but it's like pork crackling. So it's like if you like pork. So there's like, if you like meat, you're going to be in paradise. There are so many incredible options. I think a lot of them are pork based, or like I say, it's going to be the calf meat. For people who are vegetarians or vegans like myself, Käsespätzle or cheese spätzle, which is kind of Germany's answer to macaroni and cheese, but like way better. So good. It's basically little kind of, we can call them noodles, but they're kind of like an odd little shaped spätzle, which perhaps people have had elsewhere. And then it's like basically a creamy, cheesy sauce with like a mountain cheese. And then it's usually put in this pan under the broiler with like cheese and onions and everything. Like lots of times it's like caramelized onions, or not caramelized, but what's it called when they're almost like toasted or dried? I don't know.
Yeah, like dried onions.
Yeah, like sprinkled on top. Super rich, super delicious. I can definitely recommend Käsespätzle. I will say that it doesn't actually hail from Munich itself. It actually comes from another state or province called Baden-Württemberg. But it's still very much a German specialty you'll find in many of the restaurants. For somebody who is vegan, you could have like a Linsentopf, which is a lentil bowl. So like a really nice rich soup with lots of lentils and vegetables. And I would say for virtually anyone, unless you're maybe have gluten intolerance or celiacs, a German pretzel. It's like a soft pretzel. You can get them at any bakery. They're all pretty good, I would say. Something that a lot of people like having it with at a beer garden is called Obasta, which is, it's like a cream cheese, but it looks bright orange. I think it's mixed with like paprika or spices that make it that color. It's more like a fresh sort of cheese, and it's basically a spread or a dip that you have with a pretzel, which is delicious.
And so in terms of drink, would you say, I guess, beer?
Yeah,
Besides,
I didn't get to drink yet. And let me say, there's one more meal that I
yeah.
have to say that would be like, if you
Yeah.
want to have one German meal that's kind of the quintessential, especially Munich and Bavarian meal, it's Weißwurst Frühstück. So it's the white sausage breakfast, which most people don't think about sausage for breakfast.
Yeah.
Historically and traditionally, this is made also with calf meat. It is a very pale white sausage. And rather than being cooked on a grill or in an oven or however people do sausages on the barbecue, it's actually only heated up. It shouldn't be heated to boiling. It's in a pot of warm water. And when you order it, however many Weisswurst sausage you order, and usually I believe they come in pairs, it'll come in like a traditional ceramic sort of clay stone pot on the table in hot water. So it shouldn't be so hot that the casing on the sausage bursts. And
Okay.
there's like kind of rules about this. Generally, it has not been served after 11 a.m., although for tourists and a lot of restaurants will serve it. And the reason is usually it would have spoiled by then, back before refrigeration and everything like that. So
Okay.
the sausage is it's a very delicate, light, nice taste. It has nice herbs and seasoning. And there are a couple of places in Munich that you can search. It's constantly becoming more. I will say the vegan and vegetarian scene here has really exploded in the last 8 years that I've been here. But there are vegan options that I can say having tasted both, taste fairly similar in texture
Okay.
and in taste, surprisingly. Now, the sausage comes with, and what you need to do is you need to take the casing off. You're going to look like a real tourist if you leave the casing on, and you basically would like slit the sausage vertically and gently peel that casing off. You can eat it, but you're
Yeah.
not supposed to.
Okay.
It's eaten with sweet mustard.
Okay.
And this is another potential souvenir. You could buy a little jar of sweet mustard like they serve with Weisswurst, and you could eat it with all manner of different things. And it's sweet mustard, white sausage, a pretzel, and Weiss beer. You need to have your wheat beer with your sausage. Again, this is a brunch thing. This is like
Okay.
you're going to be really German and really Bavarian and a true Münchner if you eat this. You can also get quite good alcohol-free beer. It's become like prolific everywhere, just like it is in many places.
Okay.
So yeah, for people who want to like, okay, maybe I don't need a beer at 10 in the morning or 11. And where you're going to eat this is in either like a Gasthaus, which is like a traditional sort of German restaurant, or you can have it in a beer garden, sitting under a
Okay.
nice leafy tree and enjoy a really nice breakfast.
And is that all through the year, not just like
All
when
the
the
time,
sun's out?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and definitely beer. Beer is the German drink for sure. You might, if you're not a beer fan, you could have a Weißweinschorle. It's really nice in the spring, and what it is it's white wine with sparkling water, so it makes it a little bit lighter,
Okay.
which is nice if you don't want heavy drinks. And if any drink that has the word Schorle on the end implies that it's mixed with sparkling water. So another non-alcoholic drink, and I love this, and people who have lived here and expats and immigrants, we rave about the simplicity and beauty of this simple drink, is an Apfelsaftschorle, an apple juice Schorle. So it's apple juice with sparkling water.
Nice.
Or you could do Rhabarbersaftschorle, which is rhubarb juice, really good, with
Oh,
sparkling water, also popular.
never
Or
heard of that.
Johannisbeersaftschorle, which is red currant and water. So sparkling
Yeah.
water. So yeah,
Yeah.
those are some drinks for you.
Oh, wow.
Can
Okay.
you tell I'm a foodie?
I'm happy. I get excited because I'm a big foodie as well. So you mentioned it's a walkable city. It's a flat city. So
Yeah.
do you need to hire a car, or you can get around by public transport, or
Yeah, I
what's
would recommend not hiring a car personally. For someone who's here, let's say for an extended period, who perhaps does want to zip around, they have share now cars, which, there's one of these like car rentals where you can just like for a short period of time
okay?
enter with your phone, etc. But honestly, you really don't need it. We have a car because my husband gets a work vehicle and we enjoy it for our travels and going to the mountains. But I almost never take the car anywhere during my day-to-day life here in Munich. We have fantastic public transport. We have trams, buses, and what's called the U-Bahn, which is U for underground train. Easy to get around. You can walk many places. I would say you could walk, even to the far-reaching side of the city within like an hour if you wanted. I mean, it depends obviously, but as far as the central kind of neighborhoods you want to check out, for me personally, like I can be in the Altstadt downtown, if you will, the old town, in about 20 minutes walking. So, and the other
Okay.
really great way to get around, which I love doing this with visitors and would recommend, is biking around the city. You
Because it's
could
flat.
hire a bike, yeah, through one of these like bike rental companies. There's a few different ones. off the top of my head, I don't have a name I can share, but with a Google
That's right.
search, bike share, bike rental Munich, that can be really nice because you can usually pick up and drop it off, at different spots depending what you end up doing. And
Mm.
it's such a nice thing to go into the English gardens on the bike paths, to be able
Nice.
to check out other neighborhoods. For me, when I'm traveling, I feel like I get sort of like this interesting elevated perspective where I just see things a bit more openly when I'm on a bike. So if
Okay.
people like riding a bike, if you ride a bike, I can highly recommend doing that.
And to get from the airport,
Yeah.
how would you get from the airport into the city?
Yeah, I'd recommend jumping on the one of the S-Bahn trains. So from the
Mm.
airport, first you have to take an S train, and these are the only ones who arrive there. Literally, when you get off your plane, you will see signs for an S. It's quite clear when pictures of like the train. You're going to take either the S1 or the S8, or again, go in your Google Maps, find out where you want to go. But that train will take you directly to the Hauptbahnhof, which is the central train station. It probably takes about 45 minutes. Part of it will be underground, but you'll actually, for the start, get to see a little bit of the surrounds of Munich and maybe some nice farmer fields and that sort of thing. So that would be my top recommendation. As a secondary option, there is a bus from Lufthansa, the airline, that also
Mm.
takes you right into the city. I'm not sure about the costing on that. My guess is it's probably going to be a little bit more. I would say
Yep.
you're looking at, I don't know the most recent price, but probably about 10 to 15 euros to get into the city with the S-Bahn, with the train.
And the thing that scares me the most, especially when I'm traveling on my own as a
Yeah.
solo traveler, is it a tipping culture? It
Mm-hmm.
scares me. Ever
Yeah.
since I went to the US on my own, it
Yeah.
absolutely terrifies me every time I go to a country on my own. So, is it a tipping culture? Do I need to have a lot of loose change in my pocket?
It's a little bit tipping. So
Okay.
let me explain. And actually, that when you talk about change in your pocket, I will say Germany and Munich has historically been very cash based. However, that has changed a
Okay.
lot. I'm curious how it's been for other cities and countries, but specifically with COVID, there's been like a big movement to cashless payments. I
Mhm.
would say it's good to have a bit of cash with you, but if you had, call it like 50 to 100 euros for a few days, I feel like that would be enough, depending on
Okay.
where you're going.
Okay.
Most places that take cash only will post a sign outside, or you can check online if they take card or not. There are increasingly newer kind of like, I'm going to call them kind of like the hip, cool businesses that I enjoy frequenting that only take card, which is also kind of a
Yeah.
contentious thing for Germans. It's like, should we move to a, economy where we're only doing digital payments? But again, that's usually going to be stated up front and clear. It's good to
Mhm.
have ideally both on you. When it comes to tipping, yes, you do tip a little bit, but I would say typically not more than, like, it's usually about 5 to 10%.
Okay.
And to say it's a feeling is kind of strange. I feel like I need to give a little bit more than what, let's say, my German husband does. Funny, you're going to laugh. But as I was going through your questions for this, we were driving in the car the other weekend coming back from a trip, and we were running through them. And I was like, okay, let's do some examples. So like if it's 9 euros, you're going to tip. You'd do 10 probably,
Yeah.
maybe 11, maybe, but
Okay.
probably like that would be very generous, probably 10.
Yeah.
If your bill's 27 euros, you might do 29. 30 again, like 30's kind of pushing it. That's pretty generous. So
Okay.
you're usually going to round up by like a couple of dollars. Obviously, if you go out for dinner and it's like 88 euros, you might tip 95 or somewhere in that range. So I guess I'm probably stating something about 5 to 10%. What you do want to make sure you do is that when somebody's taking your card, it's becoming more common to have this option where it shows a percentage or where you can put it in. But
Yeah.
more traditionally, what it is you tell them the amount you want them to charge. So if they come and they will have their billfold and they'll pull it out and they'll say 27 euros. You won't say to them, "Can I have a euro back?"
Yeah.
Typically, what you will, or you won't say, here's $27 and then want to tip. No, you're going to say, make it 29. Okay. So it's good to
Okay.
tell them when they're putting it on the
Okay.
card, how much do you want to charge? And this always confused me because, but I don't know, I'm like trying to think how it usually is. But before it's like, I'd ask for how much I want back, or I'd say like put $2 on, but instead you just state the price. Same with paying with cash. And then
Yeah.
they'll say thank you and they'll take the additional money and they'll put it in there. They usually have a little billfold they carry.
And what do you tip with? Do you tip on every type of service or is it particular services?
Yeah, definitely restaurants, beer. It's nice to charge. If you're like up at the counter ordering a beer somewhere, some of the beer gardens, you just pay as you go through. You're not going to tip on that sort of thing. Coffee shops are increasingly having a tip option. Again, it kind of depends. If you're going to like a bakery and just buying a cup of coffee, you're not going to tip. Definitely not. But if you're
Okay.
going to like a cool third wave coffee shop, they're probably going to have a tip option only on their card only payment system, right? They're not
Okay.
going to take
Okay.
credit cards. So yeah. And I think in terms of other services as a visitor, is there anything in particular that comes to mind that you're wondering
Because
about with tipping?
I guess because just recently I was in Canada and I was with a Canadian friend and he goes, "What are you tipping for?" Because when I got to Starbucks, I wanted to buy a mug
Yeah.
and I was tipping because there was an option to tip. And he's like, "What are you tipping
Yeah, don't
that
tip on
for?"
that.
I used to tip in everything because I wasn't
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
But
And
that's it.
Canada, I mean, I think I know many people earn their livelihood in tips, which I actually disagree
Yeah.
with. I think people should be paid proper wages. But yeah, you
Yeah.
don't need to tip on gifts for sure not. And I would say even with coffee shops, like unless there's like a tipping option there, like or if you pay with cash, just like throw a few coins in their tip jar if they have it. But and it's also if you're taking an Uber or a cab or something like that, which you're probably not going to get around Munich that way. But if you do, yeah, it's nice to tip on that for sure.
Okay. Okay. Got it. I understand now.
It's confusing, right? Even I'm often like, oh, I don't know, was that enough? Was that too much?
I know I've been taken for advantage of before where I've tipped way too much. So
Yeah,
it's better to tip too much than not enough, I
I
guess.
think so.
Okay, so if I was planning to be there, say for about 3 days,
Yeah.
what would a good itinerary look like? Not as a tourist itinerary, but someone that lives there and can give you, the hidden gems.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, I'm excited. So, I'm going to say like, Paula, let's you come over to my house. I live in Maxvorstadt and we would walk over. There is this bakery. I'm going to like, now I'm going to pontificate about the bakery. You got to go to this bakery, folks, if you like bread and you like baked goods.
Yeah.
Germans make fantastic baked goods. You can get pretty good quality baked goods at most bakeries. But this bakery is really renowned through Munich. They've got 2 locations now, and it's called Julius Brandner. And it's been featured in the likes of Monocle magazine. They do their bread for all of the Michelin star restaurants in the city. They specialize in sourdough bread and they sell their bread until it's gone and then they close for the day. So, some days during the week they're open till call it 5 or 6 p.m. But other days it's like there's a sign and it's all done. So I would suggest going by Julius Brandner. Now, you may or may not just grab a big loaf of sourdough, but they do also have usually a sweet treat and it's different each day. So they don't have a huge variety like you're going to find in different bakeries. But yesterday they had a cardamom cinnamon bun. That's their Wednesday treat. And
Oh,
today's Thursday and they have a chocolate croissant. And
nice.
on Saturday, Saturday's the best. I'm going to say let's go on Saturday because it's going to fit really well with what I'm going to suggest we do next. But they have a cardamom bulle, Bulle. I think it's a Swedish treat, but it's kind of like a cinnamon bun, and it has like cardamom and saffron. It's high end, it's expensive stuff, but it is so, so good. And you'll also get a bit of this scene of like, wow, there's like 40 people waiting in line for this bakery. So let's go by Julius Brandner. Then we're going to
Yeah.
walk like another few minutes really close to what's called the Elizabeth Market. And it's an area with a bunch of different sort of little houses or stands. Stand doesn't really do it justice, but they call them Standel, little kind of, yeah, small little houses, if you will, that
Okay.
have everything from there's a wine shop, you can get some vegetables, you can get a nice fresh juice. I would propose we go to Standel 20 or Stand 20. Standel 20 is the name. They have really good coffee there. So we can have a coffee. We'll sit outside. We're going to watch all the people. There's like, everybody loves hanging out there on Saturday mornings. It's like a great scene. In the afternoon, people will be drinking wine. There's a playground. The kids are playing. It's like nice and vibey. There's a little beer garden there. From there, I'm going to propose we like take a walk downtown. We could maybe walk down Hohenzollernstraße, which is a nice street in Schwabing, the neighboring neighborhood. And then from there, we'll walk right down Leopoldstraße, where you're going to get a view down to the old town. And on either side, there's like poplar trees rising up and it's like very majestic looking. In the old town, I would propose we walk around through some of the streets. As you're going to have your like big international shops. But I'm going to propose we cruise over to the Victualienmarkt, which I mentioned earlier. That's sort of like, again, like I don't want to say a farmer's market, but maybe in an elevated sense. Maybe we want to get another coffee. There's the Victualienmarkt Roastery, which is really good. We can walk around downtown. We're going to go to the Marienplatz, which is the old town hall. Maybe the timing is right that I think it's like a little bit past 11 o'clock. There's 2 times a day where this clock comes to life and I'll admit it sounds like it's been running for about 100 years or however, 150 years, but there it tells a little bit the story of Munich and the history with the plague. And then what I can recommend doing one of the days, and what we might even do this day if we can manage to catch it after our morning coffees, is to get a free walking tour of Munich, because they're going to tell you more
Ah,
about the history of Munich and the
okay.
the old town. They're going to walk you past the Victualienmarkt. So, but if you're with me, I'll try and like get my facts together and tell you a little bit about this. What we can also do, if there's not usually a line. This is, I feel like it's a little bit of a hidden secret, but maybe the tourists know too. It's St. Peter's Kirche, which is St. Peter's Church. We're going to walk up a set of stairs. We got to get our climbing legs on, but you're going to have, I think you pay about €3 or so. You get the most beautiful view over the old town. It's like the best
Wow.
view of the old town in Munich that you're going to get downtown. So yeah, from there, I don't know, maybe we're like going to have a nice lunch somewhere. I would propose, after enjoying the city, we actually head back to my neighborhood and we pick up a pizza, either from Pretty Pizza or from Napoli Rush. They have amazing pizzas. They have great vegan pizzas, vegetarian meat choices, really yummy. And we're going to take it, let's assume we have good weather, to the Königsplatz, which again is a square where Hitler used to have his marches. And that's not why we're going to go
Okay.
there. We're actually going to go
Yeah.
there because it is a beautiful historical square. There's stairs that you can sit on. People are going to be out. And along the way, we can pick up a bottle of Prosecco or some beers or whatever our drink of choice is, because this is something I think is especially unique for people in countries where you're not allowed to publicly drink. But here we can just go sit on the steps or sit on the grass and we can have a beverage.
Yeah.
And people are going to be hanging out, and there might be a few kids there. People might have their dogs, and we're enjoying the sunshine, having our pizza. And that's going to, we'll enjoy the sunset. And then we can go over to Higgins Brewery, which
Okay.
is, gosh, the area I think might still technically be called Maxvorstadt, although it might be Neuhausen. But in any case, it's about a 15-minute walk from Königsplatz. It's owned by an American couple, so this is not quintessentially German. But what I will say is, if you're tired of drinking Weissbier or wheat beer, or Helles, which is lager, which they do really well here in Germany, and you're hankering for a delicious IPA or sour or another type of craft beer, going to Higgins, you're going to find a great international crowd of people. The owners are super lovely, Paul and Jen. They're from the States, and they are brewing incredible beer. And
Okay.
so, yeah, I'd suggest we finish the night with some beer. So that's day one.
Awesome. Yep.
Was that too much
Okay.
detail? Are you?
No, I love this. I
You're
love
here. You're
this.
here with it. Okay,
Yeah.
you're here for it. Okay, day two. I love Munich, but you know what? Let's do something a little bit different, and let's just like leave the city for a bit. So what we can do, I mentioned I have a car, but let's just pretend we're tourists. We're going to jump on the train, right? So we're going to go to the central train station,
Mhm.
which you can get there from various parts of the city, either with tram, with bus, with train. And we're going to take one of the S-Bahns out to Tegernsee. Tegernsee is a beautiful lake. See, SEE refers to lake. It's about 45 minutes. By train, it might be a little bit longer, but from Munich. And from there, we're going to do a really nice hike up above the lake. I hope that people have brought their running shoes, because you might not bring it while you're traveling, but like it's good to have a little pair of hikers or some proper runners, because we can do a hike up. And I think, and I'm a little bit worried that I'm going to state the wrong hike. What we could do is maybe in the show notes, if you want, we can always put like a suggested hike, but there are going to be
Yeah.
a couple hikes close to the train stop. I hike a lot, by the way. This is one of my favorite
I
hobbies.
love
So
hiking. Yeah.
yeah, so I have all the different names in my mind, but like this is,
Yeah.
it's going to be a few-hour hike. You're going to go up past a little church in the woods. Eventually, you're going to get to like a nice sort of ridge or peak, and you're going to look down on the lake. It's super beautiful. Yeah, the sun will be shining again. I've promised good weather. And when we come back down, what we're going to do is we're going to go to, there's like an old sort of cloister, or I guess cloister, is that the right English word, or sort of abbey where the monks were. And there's a beer garden there right on the lake. So we can go have a nice
Oh,
beer and a
nice.
meal to enjoy after our hike. And then we can take the train back into Munich. Maybe
Yep.
we have a low key night. Maybe we go, I don't know, go find some food in the old town or something, could be nice. Then on day three, I'm going to propose we cruise around on some bikes. So yeah, renting some bikes, using one of those share bike things. We can go through the English gardens. I would suggest we stop at the Say House Beer Garden, which is on a small lake there in the middle of the English gardens. Really nice beer garden. You're going to see the swans cruising by, maybe a few people out on the little paddle boats. It's not a very big lake, but it's a really nice vibe and place to check out. We can maybe ride our bikes over to the other side of the Isar River, because I've been very focused on the one side. And there's a nice neighborhood called Heidhausen, which we could check out. Again, maybe have a nice coffee. There's a nice area there, and it's called actually called Wiener Platz, the Viennese Square, and they've got also some like nice outdoor seating there. I enjoyed a nice glass of rosé in the sun recently. yeah, so you could check out Wiener Platz and like maybe have a bite to eat there. And then I would say for our sundowner this night, we're actually going to go to a rooftop bar. There's a building, sort of a cultural center called the Gaststeig. Looks like Gasteig in English. And if you go to the top there, there is a really cool rooftop bar, kind of hip, kind of fun, some like, outdoor seating. I don't know how to describe it, but it's just, yeah, a good vibe. And you're going to like look down a different perspective over Munich as you enjoy a drink, get a bite to eat. Yeah, and we'll see where the night takes us from there. So
Sounds good.
are you
When
coming
are
to
we
visit,
going?
Paula?
When are we going? I've not been to Germany, so I didn't know what to expect. So
Yeah.
I'm really quite excited about hearing all about it. So the last thing I'd like to ask you is what is a hidden gem? You know, one of those ones that
Yeah.
locals get they guard with their life that they don't really want to let anybody
Yeah.
know. But I'm going to ask you, what's your hidden gem?
Yeah. Honestly, for me, it's this neighborhood we're in the sense that, so Maxvorstadt, where we live, actually it's also referred to, or the area nearby is called the Museum Viertel, which is the museum quarter. And we have incredible galleries and museums for whatever your taste in art or culture are. So I would say tourists probably come through for that. And I will say, if you're here on a Sunday, you can go to any of these establishments for €1. It's, virtually free admittance and admission. But a lot of people don't really like go beyond that museum's virtual area. So I love the vibe of like checking out this area because it's actually where one of the big universities is, the Technical University of Munich. And I really enjoy the young vibe. My husband and I
Yeah.
always, we kind of go out and we're like, my goodness, these people could be our children. And yet they keep us young. They keep us attuned to like, what are the kids wearing these days? And actually, one of the art galleries called the Alte Pinakothek, the old Pinakothek, and there are 3 different Pinakothek galleries here. But on a nice day, there is like everybody milling about playing like spike ball, volleyball, hanging out. They've got their dogs, they're drinking beers, they're having picnics. And so I would say like hanging out in the Pinakothek grounds is like a very cool local thing to do. And there's a kind of funny little bar just across the street from there. And it's in and outside of, it's also a beer garden, an old kind of battered, graffitied school bus. It's called the Mina Teal. And I would say like that could be kind of a cool place to hang out and grab a drink. And actually on that note, I will also shout out a cool bar. Gosh, and of course now the name's going to escape me. Okay. So there's also another area that you could check out sort of on the outskirts of the old town. And it's a bar in a boat. And the boat is not on the water. So
Okay.
the boat it's just like basically suspended above the street. And it's kind of hard to describe. It's called the Alte Uting is the name of this boat. And there's seating up above it. You have like, again, kind of a cool view. It's a little bit more industrial in that neighborhood. I mean, people live there as well. It's not going to be the kind of beautiful view you might have some other places, but it's a great place for a sunset. And they also have like food stands. So you can go and like order a wood fire pizza, or you could go get a kebab or something like that. So again, these are like, if you want to kind of feel, I don't want to say sceney because it's very laid back, but it's like, these are where local people go hang out and have drinks on the weekend. So yeah, those could be a couple cool areas to check out.
I love that. I love that. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, or any tips that you'd like to add before we go?
Yeah. What I will say about Munich as someone who had visited the city a couple of times before moving here is I liked it before moving here. You might say it's kind of funny to move somewhere you don't love, but like that's what I'm about to say next. I didn't love it, as in it didn't really capture me, because what I will say about Munich is I found it very beautiful and perhaps feeling a little bit generic. We've got these like beautiful red tiled roofs. It's a lovely city. There's some nice architecture. But it didn't capture my imagination in the way that somewhere like Berlin, which felt really gritty and it had this deep history and it's like super diverse and interesting. It didn't feel that way to me. But I will say Munich, at least for me, felt like a slow burn. And moving here, living here, experiencing the city as locals, it is so wonderful because it very much feels oriented around a lifestyle that is not. It's not just about work. It's about play. It's about enjoyment. They say Munich is a village. There's like a saying about that. And it feels like the best of both a big city and a small town. There is something interesting, and I haven't mentioned these churches yet, but they're called it's actually one church. It's called the Frauenkirche, but there are 2 towers, and you will see them on tourist items. You will see them if you get up above the city. The reason why is nothing is allowed to be built higher than the Frauenkirche, these 2 towers. And it's actually quite a beautiful church. I believe it's Gothic in style. It's not extraordinarily ornate, but it's worth stepping into. It's in the old town. They have what's referred to as an onion tower. Sorry, an onion Zwiebelturm, they call it. Pardon me, any Germans listening, let me know how I did today. But an onion tower, effectively, but it's like the kind of rounded steeple with a point, but like quite bulbous and rounded. Looks like an onion. This is why they call it this. There's two of them. This church, because nothing can be built higher than it, the city has a very low profile, and it gives it like a really nice kind of homey feel, as opposed to being like you're locked in this big city. So I would just say for people visiting, like, it's not that there aren't things to enjoy and learn about like you would as a tourist in any other city, but it's really more about enjoyment. It's more about like cruise around, have a drink in a beer garden, sit and have a coffee, like just kind of take it in. Go for a run along the Isar River. It's a very active city. It's a young city. So yeah. And we just elected our first ever green mayor in the city, which is really cool. And he's only about 35.
Oh,
is
wow.
queer. It feels like a really positive step forward for the city that's going to bring like a lot more, interest and diversity and importance on conserving our green spaces, which are so beautiful here.
I'm excited to hear what the future holds for it. It'd be interesting to see what in a few years' time what he's done, and I'm assuming it's a he.
Exactly. Yeah.
And well, to be fair, I'd really like to go and see now what it's like. I've not been, so I've got to put it on my bucket list for sure now.
Yeah,
You've
absolutely.
definitely motivated me.
Yeah. Very cool.
Thank you so much for taking the time to come in and speak about Munich, because you've really opened my eyes to what I don't know. It's never been one of those places. It has always been on my list of places I want to go, but it was just for the the Christmas markets.
Yeah.
But now I want to go in other seasons as well.
Yeah, come in the summer, come in the spring.
Yeah, excellent. And thank you so much for coming on. And I will put all the information in the show notes. So anyone who wants to listen to your podcast or get in touch with you, it'll all be there. So yeah,
Amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks very
Paula.
much. Bye. Okay. Thank you for joining me on the Truly Expat Travel Podcast. If you liked this episode and you found it valuable, then why don't you go ahead and like and subscribe so that you don't miss an episode moving forward. I've got some amazing guests and some fantastic destinations coming up. But if this is the episode and this is the destination that you really want to go to, then I suggest you head over to trulyexpattravel.com, where you'll find travel guides and deep dive into this sort of destination. If that's not what you want and you can't find an episode that is a destination you want to travel to, then head over and follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, because I'm pretty sure you'll find something there. In the meantime, safe travels, and I'll see you next week.